Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Megan McDonald. I'm one of the recruitment coordinators here at NSCC, and I'm glad that you could join us for today's webinar, which is about two programs that we have at the college, American Sign Language Studies and American Sign Language English Interpretation. So today we're going to be joined by a couple of faculty members from our programs. We're going to talk a lot about what you can expect as a student, as well as how to apply. I'd like to get started today with a couple of important acknowledgements. NSCC is located in Mi'kma'ki, the unceded territory and traditional homeland of the Mi'kmaq Nation. Our relationship is based on a series of peace and friendship treaties between the Mi'kmaq Nation and the Crown dating back to 1725. As treaty beneficiaries, we recognize that we're all treaty people. NSCC recognizes the African Nova Scotians as a distinct group who arrived here 400 years ago. From that time on, they've contributed to the infrastructure and economic wealth of the towns and cities they helped to build, but from which they could not benefit. Let us learn more about how our respective communities were shaped by the historical contributions of African Nova Scotians to Mi'kma'ki. So for everyone who is tuned in and watching this webinar live, welcome. You'll see that we have an ASL interpreter here today and our staff members who are on screen right now as well. And if you have any questions right now for this live session, you're welcome to pop them into our chat. So on your end of the GoToWebinar software, you'll have a chat box like you can see on screen right here. Type those questions in and we'll make sure that we leave some time at the end for you to ask your question. If you'd prefer to ask your question either using signing or if you'd like to use your microphone, you're welcome to do that. You'll just need to let me know that in the chat so that I can turn those things on for you. Because right now for the audience, cameras are off, mics are off, we can't see or hear you, but I'm happy to turn that on if that's the way that you'd like to communicate with us today. One other note is that if you have any questions after today's session ends, you're welcome to send them in to us. Our email address is recruitment@nscc.ca, and I'll make sure that I show that again at the end of the presentation. Now, if you're watching a recording of this, because we are recording this today so that folks can watch it after our presentation, this recording is being made on April 25th, 2024. So the information we're talking about is all correct and relevant as of this date. If you're checking back later on, after the recording's made, I recommend also popping in and taking a look at the program pages just to see if any updates have been made, or you can email us at recruitment with any questions. So first thing I'd like to share is that we are, when we're talking about these two programs in particular, talking about the Ivany campus, which is located in Dartmouth, Nova Scotia. You'll see on the map, NSCC has many campuses across the province, but our ASL programs are located exclusively at the Ivany campus in Dartmouth. So we've got some program details here, and we'll go one by one. So our ASL studies program is 1 year in length. The delivery is full-time, it's in person, it's on campus, so you're not looking at any online courses. And as I mentioned, it's offered at the Ivany campus in Dartmouth. In order to qualify, the admission requirements require a high school diploma or equivalent. So that could mean GED, it could mean the free test that we offer called the TOES test. There are a number of ways to qualify, but generally speaking, we're looking at high school or equivalent. If you've taken any post-secondary, you're welcome to still apply for ASL studies. Next up is American Sign Language and English Interpretation. So this is a 2-year program. The delivery, like ASL studies, is full-time, it's in person, it's on campus and at the Ivany campus in Dartmouth. Both programs have an intake in September each year, and this being a 2-year program is a diploma program. Now, the admission requirements for this one are a little bit different because you'll need to have successfully completed our ASL studies program or a prior program at NSCC, which was known as Deaf Studies, or you may have a certificate equivalent from another post-secondary institution. So I'd like to introduce our faculty presenters. So Qureshi, who teaches in the ASL Studies English Interpretation program as well, and then Justin Reed, who's coming to us from ASL English Interpretation. Welcome, you two. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Zoe, to share some information about the courses in ASL Studies and, of course, any other program information that you'd like to share with everyone today.
Thank you very much. Nice to meet you all, even though I can't see any of you. Very nice to see you all here today. And I can tell you a little bit more about the ASL Studies program. So the ASL Studies program is a foundational program, and it is for people who don't know any ASL, no sign language, don't know anything about deaf culture, have never experienced the language in a visual mode. ASL is unique in that way. It's not a language that has an auditory mode. And it is an immersion program. So in the first couple of months, you'll really get the hang of it. Lots of new things to discover along the way, how to use a language that is really about using your body in a different way. We start really with the basics, and we build the foundation that way. And we also integrate deaf culture all along the way, from a beginning orientation all the way throughout. There's a linguistics element as well that students find really complicated, but really enjoyable to learn about the inner workings of the language. And when I deliver that course, I get a lot of questions. I really love investing a lot in my students, especially when they're eager to learn about the language. We talk about being an ally to the deaf community, and we prepare students to take an allyship approach when talking about being in deaf communities and learning about deaf culture. All of these things that I'm talking about are integrated throughout the year. There is a lab element as well, so you can take your learning and then do some applied practice and intentional practice so that you can build your skills. And after the first 3 levels of ASL, you're ready to either screen into the interpreting program or do something else. But it is really a 1-year foundational program that is meant to build those language and culture skills. Right now we're in a 5-week spring semester. Fall semester is 15 weeks, second semester is 15 weeks, and then the third semester is a 5-week spring session that gives you the picture of the whole year. So hopefully that was helpful, and any questions, I'm very happy to answer them. Send them in the chat, or if they come to you later, please feel free to get in touch.
Oh, sounds good. In terms of that year, so I'm sure it's quite a busy year. There's lots of material that you're going over. What kind of class size could students expect to be in?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I think the average has been about 15 to 20 students in each class. And we wouldn't have more than that. And the reason for that really being is the time that each instructor wants to spend with each individual student, giving them feedback and explaining their how to grow their skills specifically tailored to them. There are a few courses, so for example, linguistics, where groups are individual sections of 15 or 20 students in maybe section A, section B are all combined into one larger linguistics course. So there are different instructors for different sections, and then for the language courses, and then in next semesters, the instructors will change in order to give a different language model to each different section. And just to also encourage various discussion from diverse perspectives.
Wonderful, thanks so. Justin, do you want to give us an overview of some of the highlights in the English interpretation program?
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for hosting this event. It's I wish, like Zoe, I can't see folks who are out there, but I wish I could, and hopefully we will at some point in the future. So as Megan said, the interpreting program is 2 years. And at the end of the 2 years, you receive a diploma. You start out in your first year building off the knowledge that you received in ASL studies. So you continue on with what is called pre-interpreting ASL 1 and 2. As well as we move into some of those interpreting translation skill building courses. And just to go through some of them there, discourse analysis and translation is, I'm going to say, one of my favorite courses in the entire program, because it really gives you a foundation to work from and to start your sort of interpreting journey and understanding more about ASL, and then also understanding a lot more about English, the language that you probably use every day out there in the world. And what we do in that course is we start very basic, giving you simple texts, both in ASL and English. We build on that, we give you the skills. It's a very active, participatory class. And I would say overall in ASL studies and in the interpreting program, it's very much an active type class. So rarely are you going to be in a class where there are lectures being given. It's more you are literally getting your hands up in the air and trying it out, and just having a go at it. And of course, a lot of what we do is rooted in fun and play, but also rooted in like, let's get this done and let's think critically about what it is we're doing and the choices that we're making. So in first year, you're going to do all that. We have another great course in first year, which is presentation arts, which is taught by a deaf faculty member. And that's more about getting to know your body a bit more, moving around, understanding how your body moves and how you can make sense of meaning just with body language. So it takes that concept of body language a step further to where you actually start understanding how you can make meaning without even having signs or words. Yeah, that's about first year. So there's courses in that. I would say in second year, this is where it gets really exciting, I think, for most of our students, because this is where we have our 3 placements. We have a fall placement, then we have a winter placement, and we have our spring placement. And right now, our second year students are out on their 4-week spring placement with supervising interpreters across the country. So that's a pretty cool thing as well. And in our second year, that's when we start really getting into the nitty gritty of interpreting, where we bring deaf individuals from the community into the classroom. We bring in working interpreters into the classroom. So you can really start building on those networking skills and also just the skill of interpreting. Yeah. And then we have I have a couple of courses that I like in this one, especially in second year. There's a course called Role and Ethics, where we learn a lot about the demand control schema theory and framework and how that applies to our decision making as interpreters. And I got a bit excited today, so I brought some textbooks just to show you. And this is the textbook here. It's called DCS. It's hard to see because I have the ring light there, but this is an incredible textbook that we go through methodically in class, but also just apply it to real life situations. And then another textbook that we use is called Deaf Eyes on Interpreting. And this is a great book here that is from the perspective of deaf individuals and their relationship to interpreting, but also to interpreters. And that really provides us with a foundational sort of framework on how we look at what it is that we do as interpreters. Yeah, I think so. Yeah. And maybe just a bit about myself too. I've been teaching in the program for 6 years. I have deaf parents, so my mother is deaf, my father is deafblind. I've been doing this thing called interpreting for quite some time, and I thoroughly enjoy working alongside Zoe and the rest of the team. And yeah, I think I might have rambled a bit, but hopefully it is a bit weird not seeing people in front of me, so it is. But if you have any questions, please ask. And you can, again, as Megan said, reach out to Megan, or if you want to reach out to myself or Zoe to get more specific information. And we're also open to having people come and test drive the program and coming in and just seeing what it looks like, both in the ASL Studies program and also in the interpreting program.
I was muted there for a minute. Justin, that's a great point you bring up about the test drive opportunity. So for anyone who isn't aware, NSCC offers the opportunity for folks who are interested in programs to come and spend some time in the classroom, so you get a sense of what it's like to be a student in that particular program. There's something that typically runs from October through the springtime every year. So you're able to, if you head to nscc.ca, type in the word test drive, you'll see a form there that you can fill out to request one. But I know that if you're looking at joining us potentially this September, the test drive season would be a little bit late for you. So if there were any kind of questions, connections you wanted to make, certainly reach out to us in recruitment. I can connect you with Justin and Zoe for some more details and a bit more information. We're also always happy to come and take you on a tour of the Ivany campus, which is a really beautiful facility. Whenever I'm walking down the hallway where many of our ASL program classes are, you have a beautiful view of Halifax Harbor, really great light coming in those big windows. It's a really nice place to learn.
Yeah, absolutely. If I could just add here, you mentioned the classrooms, and there is a bank of windows there. So we have class in those classrooms, and then all the students go and sit by the windows and we can go back into the classrooms. And if we keep the blinds open, I know that everybody's always watching the harbor. I have to get everybody's attention, of course, in a deaf way by flicking the lights on, off and on. But sometimes we have to close the blinds because it is just too beautiful.
Yeah, and to add on to this though as well, we do, I would say, have probably the best view in the college, and we're lucky enough to have designated classroom spaces as well that are designated for the ASL Studies program and the interpreting program. And what that means is that you'll notice around the college that our ASL spaces, our walls are different colors, so they're a solid color, usually painted like a blue, green, or an orange. We also have specific technology that we use in those spaces. So in our interpreting classrooms, we have booths set up so that if we're doing any type of recording, whether that's going from ASL into English or English to ASL, we have that type of equipment available to us so that we can make the most of the space that we're in.
We've got a photo of some students here who are really from the program, and it's hard to see in this photo, but they are sitting right beside those great windows that we were just talking about. Do you two want to share some of the kind of skills that you're learning in the program or that you're teaching in the program that can help students prepare for what comes next for them, whether that's a career as an interpreter or a career in another industry where they're using their ASL skills?
Justin, or?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think for ASL studies, a graduate from that program can definitely use the language that they've acquired in that program in a variety of settings. We've had individuals go into work where it's like maybe you're working in a deaf organization or deaf agency, or just working with deaf individuals at your workplace, and they may be you would be able to sign with them, converse with them, and build those relationships there. For the interpreting program, we definitely gear you up for post-graduation. We do that in a variety of ways. First, focusing on your skill and enhancing your skill as an interpreter. And then we have projects embedded in our courses where we value networking with working interpreters across the country. So we have a project that's dedicated to that, where our first year students go out, choose 10 interpreters that they want to meet, they meet with them, and then hopefully they start building on that relationship that then they can ask them, the individuals that they met, to go on placement with them in their second year. And second year is really when there's a focus on that post-graduation and that working aspect of it. So we have courses that are designed around how to create an invoice. We bring in working interpreters to discuss how do they file their taxes. So really all the basic stuff that one would need to go out there and work. We also have great opportunities with some video relay service providers. So video relay service providers are those where a deaf individual will call and they'll use whether their iPhone, their laptop, or their iPad or whatever, and they'll have an interpreter on screen, and that interpreter on screen makes a call to whomever may not know sign language. So a real simple way is when my mother wants to order a pizza, she now can order a pizza by calling VRS. There's an interpreter there, that interpreter makes the call, pizza's ordered. All to say that we have partnerships with local agencies and organizations and businesses that we offer placement opportunities for, so you can learn and build on your skills, so that when it does come time to graduate, you're ready and you feel ready to make that transition into the working world. Does that answer the question? Hopefully.
I think it does, yeah. I could just add something there, Justin. When I think about ASL skills specifically, I think about language and modality, and specifically about how ASL is in a visual mode. So when I see people go out as interpreters and join different fields of interpreting, so medical interpreting or community interpreting, it's a little bit different. 5 years ago, up until now, there's been a huge demand for interpreters. If you think about VRS calls, sometimes you wait on hold until there's an interpreter available. So interpreters are still in very high demand in all fields. So across Canada, in any field, there's a high demand of interpreters. There's no expectation that you come to Nova Scotia and stay in Nova Scotia. There's lots of government work at all levels. There's lots of need for interpreters in lots of different places. You see our staff interpreter, Brenna, working now. So that's a specific field doing the work that she does. And if you think that you might possibly want to be an interpreter, I'm sure that you have the skills that you have and that there's a niche for you too. We will give you what you need to build to make it to graduation and feel ready and feel to have that readiness to work as an interpreter. You acquire the skills along the way, and we keep you busy while you do it, and we give you what you need.
So I feel like that's a really good summary. And what is, I think, interesting, and certainly correct me if this isn't accurate, is that there is interpreting work in person, face to face, but there's also opportunities to be working remotely with folks across Canada. So could be something awesome if you're thinking about, of course, staying close to home. You want to be in Nova Scotia if this is where you're from, or if you're from somewhere outside of the province. It could also mean that you're, taking those skills back with you, or maybe you'd like to stick around and know that there are so many opportunities within and outside of the province.
Yeah, absolutely, Megan. I think we've seen with the advent of just virtual spaces and with the provincial accessibility acts that are coming into place, and also the federal accessibility act coming into place, you now see interpreters in every aspect of life now, which is great. So as Zoe said, the demand is high for interpreters. We really can't keep up with the demand in all reality, and so having more students take interest in to become interpreters and make that commitment, to the field as well as to the deaf community too. And I think that's a big component of our program, is our strength and our roots to the community that we serve, which are the deaf communities in Nova Scotia and really in the Atlantic region. And building those relationships with those who are deaf, blind, or hard of hearing is a key component to our programming, and gives you that, I would say, that authentic learning space where you are not only just instructed by your instructors, but we bring in people into our classrooms, and we have the ability to have many deaf individuals come into our space, especially for the interpreting students, and they come in and a deaf individual will come in and share their stories, and we as interpreters get to practice interpreting, but also build those connections with those people. And our first year students host what's called Sign and Dine, and it's a monthly event that the first year students take it on themselves to host an event with the community, and this year it's at Lion's Head Pub over in Halifax, and they host it once a month, and it's just their chance to meet interpreters, meet current and former students, and really meet the deaf community that resides in this area. And it's, I would say, a successful event that those students take on themselves with the support of faculty, but it's a fun one. Yep. And I think they do the same thing in ASL studies. They host different community events as well, right, Zoe?
Yes, that's right. And getting together to socialize with the interpreting program and the ASL studies students as well, who might not have as much exposure to the language yet. So it does expose them a little bit to what it's going to be, especially if they're a little bit timid or if they find it hard. It is a welcoming environment for the ASL study students as well to see the interpreters doing that. What is also unique to this program is that we do incorporate Maritime Sign Language, which is not something that you're going to get at George Brown or anywhere else. So here, where we are in the Maritimes, we do talk about MSL a little bit more here. And so we give that exposure uniquely that you can't get anywhere else. So that is something to think about, and might allay your fears a little bit as well.
And to tag on to that too, Zoe, I think it's also important to acknowledge that our manager, Dr. Bev Buchanan, is a deaf deaf of deaf, so meaning that she has deaf parents, researcher, and has done her PhD work in the preservation of maritime sign language too. So to have that expertise in-house and to leading our programs is a real great, I would say, privilege that our program has that many other interpreting programs across the country might not necessarily have that deaf leadership. So we're in a very unique position where we have, I think, we have 3 deaf faculty, 1 hearing faculty. So when I say hearing, I mean a person who can hear, 1 CODA faculty, so a person who comes from a deaf background, that really sort of creates a dynamic faculty group, a working group where we're all bringing in sort of our expertise from whether it's from our lived experiences or from our sort of studies that we've done. Zoe, maybe I'll boast for you, Zoe, but Zoe graduated with a master's from Gallaudet University. So Gallaudet University is the only deaf university, solely deaf university in the world. So to have that expertise in-house is a great thing that we have and that we take pride in as well. So the students will be exposed to many different things, especially MSL, ASL, sign variations, and how to interpret all that.
It's exciting to hear how there is some combining of students in both programs as well. I can imagine for a student who's in ASL studies that being able to have a sense of what's happening with the interpreting students, that can be really helpful, and then planning their next steps. I know that in my position in student recruitment, I've spoken to folks who are interested in taking ASL studies in addition to another program at NSCC that would be in a completely different department. They're interested in business, they're interested in healthcare, something else like that. And they're seeing ASL studies as a really good way to expand the ways that they can communicate with the people they'll be working with. So either doing that before another program or after another program.
Yes, Megan. Yeah, we've had individuals come into ASL studies either prior to taking a program or they've already taken a program at NSCC. For instance, our CAA program that we have, and then taking ASL studies. That's a beautiful matchup in terms of going in and working as a CAA in in wherever you may find yourself in. We've also had I think audiologists who have taken the ASL program so that they can learn more sign language, so that when a deaf client comes in, they can communicate with them one-on-one if they are able to. But yeah, you're right. Usually what we find though is, and maybe I'm a little bit biased on this, is that we have students going into our ASL studies program, and then I think, as Zoe eloquently said earlier, is that you find this love for it and this knack for it that you want to continue bringing forward, and especially when you build those relationships with deaf community members and interpreters and your fellow students in the classroom, it really does carry forward.
Thinking about the industries or areas that people would end up in, either as interpreters or folks who've taken ASL studies, I'm imagining that in some areas there are really specific vocabularies that you would need. I'm thinking the medical field, for example. Are there opportunities or kind of avenues that your students take advantage of, maybe post-graduation, in order to kind of develop those vocabularies further?
Okay, I will, Zoe was saying. Yeah, so they are distinct programs. So I want to talk about the ASL Studies program, for example. If somebody's looking to get into policing or community services, that sort of thing, that gives you a good foundation to be able to have conversations in ASL. So if you're talking about very serious advising about medical issues or that sort of thing, the ASL program isn't going to give you enough of that. It won't give you enough of language foundation. You get basic syntax, but you don't get enough of a language fluency to be able to talk about complex medical things. So the interpreting program is what you're going to want for that. So if you think about deaf people across Canada and their literacy rates, and the ASL studies being a one-year program and how that relates. It's really about foundational language generally, broadly. The interpreting program gives you an introduction to all of those specialized fields with the opportunity to acquire more later if desired by the graduate.
Yeah, and to add on this too, I would sort of look at the interpreting program because it is a 2-year program, and if we sort of look at those programs closer, that program closer, and suss out first year. First year is more like you're going to have that foundational language exposure, and you're going to have you're going to build an understanding of how to interpret between both languages at a deeper level. So looking at ASL texts, a wide variety, diverse set of texts that we'll look at and really sort of analyze and work through, and then also working through English text to have a better understanding of English as a first language in that case. And then in our second year, that's when placement comes into play, when you start making decisions with the guidance of your faculty of where you see yourself, like what are your interests of working. So we usually say the first placement is just go out there and see what's available. And that's a 2-week placement. And so most of our students will go into the community. And so by community, we mean just, medical appointments, bank appointments, travel agencies, or wherever you may find yourself there and needing an interpreter. That's where folks go. Other students go to the K-12. So in Nova Scotia, Atlantic Canada, we have something called APSE. And we have a relationship with APSE, a partnership that we've built over the years. And so some of our students go with educational interpreters, as well as sometimes, and this is a new thing and an exciting thing, some of our students are placed with deaf educational interpreters. So these are deaf individuals who are interpreters in educational settings, and that's turning out to be a really great avenue for language exposure for our students as well. And then we have other students who go into video relay service, and they want to experience that one. So we start off there, but usually by the 3rd placement, we have a pretty good idea, or the students have a pretty good idea of where they see themselves working. And so what we do as faculty is we try to guide them and make those connections for them so that they can build on those relationships and hopefully see themselves working after graduation. And those relationships that they build with their mentors or placement supervisors are key, because those are the same people who will probably give you a shout at June, probably the day after graduation, saying, hey, I have this gig, do you want to come join me? And you'll be off on the road and starting your interpreting journey. Yeah. And then when it comes to, I think, professional development, after graduation, there's so much out there now that we have access to joining things online. And there is a provincial organization called the Maritime Association of Professional Sign Language Interpreters. If you become a member, when you graduate, you become a member with them, and they offer at times here and there professional development workshops. But then there's also the national organization, which is called the Canadian Association of Sign Language Interpreters, and they also provide professional development opportunities, or at least will allow us as members to know where those professional development opportunities are. Yep.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that. And I'll add as well a little bit of a funny story. Just this last Friday, I had to go to the dentist, and as I sat there, I didn't know who the interpreter was going to be. And I came in, and it was a student on placement who was interpreting for me at the dentist. And so I guess they would have had a very similar little moment of shock, being like, oh my goodness, that's my instructor. So yeah, interpreters are everywhere, but we all just, and I think the dentist had a little bit of a moment too, but it's good. This is real life. That's we all ended up there together. So their training, and it all worked out, and we went along with the appointment, and it was good.
It's really exciting to see how integrated students are with the community while they're in school. And I can just imagine how helpful that is, like Justin, as you mentioned, for employment opportunities afterwards. And so, as you mentioned, for fun run-ins with, friends and colleagues and faculty. That's exciting.
Mm-hmm.
Well, something else that I think would be kind of fun for anyone to take a look at who is, interested in learning more about the student experience in the program. We recently had a day in the life feature on NSCC social media channels that were highlighting a current ASL English interpretation student named Cornella. So if you wanted to watch Cornella's day in the life on Instagram, I've just taken a screenshot here of the Instagram account, and it's day in the life number 4, and it's also been saved as a reel. So if you wanted to take a look, Cornella in the video answers questions that came from the public and gives a good bit of insight into what it's like for a student in the program. We can also take a quick look at some of the program costs. So our program tuition costs for September 2024 will be released soon. They always come out in the springtime. So right now, what I've got on screen are the 2023-2024 student tuition costs, just so that you can kind of get a bit of an idea of what to expect. So you can see that we have 2 different rates here for domestic students as well as for international students, and both domestic and international students are welcome to apply to the program. There are some additional fees on top of these annual tuition rates that you see on screen now. You can find a full list of them on the URL that we have on screen right here. But I also have some of them selected and broken down in the next slides. So here for the ASL Studies program, you'll see that there are some additional costs, some different things that you would need to purchase as a student. So there are some textbooks that you would need. You also need to have a budget set aside for deaf community events. There's also a software that you would need to purchase. So I might ask you to explain a little bit more about GoReact. There's also a need for an external hard drive and also for a MacBook for your studies.
Sure, I can explain GoReact.
Yeah, please.
GoReact is actually a really useful tool for feedback. So if you're expecting feedback in English, written English, instead we actually use GoReact. So we can pause a submitted video from a student, pause it, timestamp it, give feedback in ASL, and then release the feedback entirely to the student. So when they receive their assessment back to them, it has video recorded, sign language feedback, time-stamped, exactly what we're talking about. So this is important for us linguistically and in interpreting in the target language. So it gives feedback, and it also delivers feedback in the appropriate mode. So it is twofold for us. It's really beneficial for the program and the students.
Yeah, that sounds like a really useful tool. The other tech requirement that's listed here is the MacBook. Is it important for students to be using a Mac? Could they use a PC? I'm wondering if there are some software compatibility issues that we'd be addressing with that specific make and model.
Justin, do you want to take that one, or I'll go ahead actually. Yeah, so we recommend a Mac because the FaceTime camera is good enough quality right out of the box. You could use a PC, and I do see students successfully using PCs, and that's fine. So an Apple product is not a requirement. We recommend Apple, but we're fine with either. GoReact is a requirement, and it is downloadable on both. GoReact, and there are some others that there are some minimal capabilities that the computer needs. 8 gigs of RAM. It needs to be able to handle the speeds. There is specific technical requirements if you need them that we can provide.
Sounds good, thank you. And then for the ASL English Interpretation Program, you'll see, because it's a 2-year program, we've got them divided here, year 1 and year 2. Justin showed us some of the textbooks earlier, so you can see there are some textbooks that you would be investing in each year. Also some additional kind of supplies, some association membership fees, and again, a budget that you'd want to set aside to participate in deaf community events. That GoReact software would be a big one. And again, the hard drive and the computer. Something I will note though, is that if you're coming from a program, like say you took ASL Studies, you're moving into ASL English Interpretation, you don't need to buy a new computer. As long as what you have works, then you're good to go. We simply have all of those costs here, just in case you're starting from scratch, you need to purchase something new. It helps with budgeting. Justin, is there anything that you wanted to add here for program costs? for your program?
Yeah, I'll just say related to the GoReact software too. So I do believe, so correct me if I'm wrong, it's a licensed software for a duration of time. So if you get it in ASL studies, you'll be able to use it throughout your time in the interpreting program. Or if you are coming from another institution that offers an ASL studies program that uses GoReact software, you'll be able to bring it over.
Yeah, the licensing is either 2 years or 5 years, thereabouts, so you wouldn't have to repurchase it. You buy it once and then you're licensed, i.e. 2, 3, or 5 years.
Yep.
Yeah, correct.
Which is a great thing to have, especially post-graduation, if you want to connect with your peers in your class afterwards and have sort of things up there like resources so you can continue interpreting practice, that sort of thing. It's a great tool to have, and it's a tool that's used. It's a software that's used by many interpreting organizations, agencies, and businesses out there. Yep. It's actually developed by a deaf business, I think, in Salt Lake. I don't know. No, it's not. Oh, okay.
Fortunately not.
I know. Okay, sorry. Yeah.
It is, though, I'm hearing you say that it's a way for potentially students to stay in touch post-graduation. And that doesn't surprise me. And the reason being, whenever I've come into a classroom, ASL interpretation, for example, is kind of top of mind for me. Everyone seems to really enjoy being in the class together. It's a relatively small group, and so much of the learning that you're doing that I've observed, of course, is face-to-face. You're constantly interacting with your peers. So I imagine that those kinds of friendships, relationships end up really, growing through the duration of the program, which is so nice just in general, of course, to be meeting people that you really click with, but also so helpful as your classmates often become your colleagues post-graduation. Nice to have those relationships.
Absolutely, and as a graduate from the program as well, I still maintain those relationships. And from what I've seen over the 6 years teaching in there, that you build those relationships that become lifelong relationships. Yep.
Thinking still about program costs and the investment that one is making in post-secondary, I wanted to share that we have a ton of support that comes from the NSCC side. So we as an institution have over $3 million in awards that are given to students each year. And these can be for any number of reasons. Most of our awards are focused simply on financial need. There are some that look at specific lived experience or grades, for example, and many awards are open to both domestic and international students. So know that if you're coming to NSCC, you should absolutely be looking at awards. The awards applications, there are 2 different times of year that we do awards, in the springtime and again in the fall. So you can be applying for awards in many cases as soon as you're accepted, that first spring or fall, right up until you graduate. So tons of opportunities, and with $3 million up for grabs for students, know that there is certainly a great chance at getting some support that way, and that would be in addition to, say, provincial student loans, etc. So if you do have any kind of questions about the funding side, feel free to reach out to us in recruitment. We can send you some links. Now, application deadlines. If you are interested in applying, and of course right now it's April, but if you're watching this as a recording later, it might be another time of year. So I wanted to share some deadlines with you. If you're a domestic student, which means that you are either a Canadian citizen, a permanent resident, or you have protected persons refugee status, you don't have an application deadline. And in fact, you can apply at any time of year. We're able to accept students right up until the program has gotten underway in September. So know that there isn't a hard deadline that you have to rush for. However, because we look at applications in the order that they're received, it's always beneficial to apply as soon as you're ready to do so. So as soon as you feel like this is a program for you, get that application in and we will review them as they come in. For domestic students, there's a $40 application fee, and you'll also need to send in any of the transcript materials that we need so that we see that you meet that education requirement. If you're an international applicant, we have a deadline for applications every year, which is April 1st for the following September intake. So right now, April 24th, that deadline has passed for us. It's the 25th, April 25th. The deadline for September has passed. but you're welcome to apply at the end of September 2024 when our applications for September 2025 open. So just have to wait a few months, then you can get that application in. The exception to that rule is if you're an international student who currently has a valid study permit, you're welcome to apply. That April 1st deadline is in place because of study permit processing times, but if you've already got one, feel free to apply. Just make sure that you send us an email showing that you already have that, that required permit so that we can get your application processed. So I can see that some questions have come in the chat. So I will read them, and Justin and Zoe, you can hop in and answer as you'd like. Let's see here. Okay, so the first question, and we can answer this for both of our programs, is to get a sense of what the schedule looks like. You know, what days are students in classes? What are the hours like? I know that that can potentially change from year to year or term to term, but generally speaking, what can students expect?
Yeah, so I would say for the interpreting program, there is, Monday to Friday, classes usually start around 9 and go until about 3:34. Now, it's not full classes for the entire week. There might be a Tuesday afternoon that you don't have any classes assigned, and then maybe a Friday afternoon there's no classes assigned. But it's usually a full week in class, and then depending on the time of year as well, you may be out on placement or you may be going out on observation. So those are built into the class schedules and times. And for ASL studies, Zoe, what's the schedule? I think it's similar.
It is, yeah. I would say Monday to Friday, 9 to 4, thereabouts. Yeah, the same.
Yeah. Sorry.
Those general kind of business hours often.
Mm-hmm.
I think this question is coming from a childcare perspective. And I will say that if you have kids who are daycare age, there is a daycare on campus at Ivany. So if you were planning to become a student, you could also contact the daycare center to see if there's a spot available for your kid. I've got another question about schedules, which sounds like with the answer we just provided, it shows that this isn't necessarily a possibility, but we have someone who's interested in ASL studies on a part-time basis or evening basis. So it isn't something that's offered currently, but who knows, if there's a bit of interest, things can always change in the future. I think we'll just have to check back and see if it's something that NSCC offers. All right, so we have someone asking about if there are any other ways to be accepted into the ASL interpretation program, aside from completion of ASL studies or equivalent. Is there any kind of test you can take? And we certainly accept transfer courses from other institutions. But Justin, do you often see folks who are coming in from other experiences outside of the prerequisite at NSCC?
Yeah, so all students, all interested applicants have to complete a screening process in order to go into the interpreting program. So even if you're a graduate from ASL Studies or an ASL Studies program from another institution, you still have to complete that screening process to go in. It's rare that we have students coming in without ASL Studies as a background. That now, if you have let's say you're like someone like myself, maybe you have grown up in the deaf community, your first language is sign language, you have deaf parents, that sort of thing. There could be exceptions for that as well, but it would all depend on meeting with the faculty, assessing where you are in terms of your language, your skills, that sort of thing. But in most cases, we do require that our students are completing a ASL Studies program certificate or equivalent. Zoe?
Yeah, and I will add ASL skills being paramount there, but also remembering that there's a linguistic foundation that we teach in the ASL Studies program. There's a deaf culture foundation, So we are expecting people to have those skills when they go into the interpreting program, so we can start scaffolding them from there. So without that, the student themselves wouldn't be really set up very well to understand that advanced linguistic and deaf culture information and be ready to apply that to interpreting and be successful. So ASL Studies gives you that. ASL Studies is not just knowing a little bit of sign language, it's linguistics, it's allyship, it's deaf culture, it's a number of other skills that are maybe a little bit more hidden.
Thank you. Do you ever have folks who are taking ASL studies while also working, either part-time or full-time? Do you see that with students though?
Yeah, the class schedule, like I said, is Monday to Friday, 9 to 4, but there are some times that are spares, right? So there might be a Wednesday morning or Wednesday evening that a student could work part-time, and sometimes during the weekly schedule, there might be an entire day that there is no classes, or some days, depending on where we are in the course, that there'll be extra days. So yes, students do work.
Yeah, and to follow up on that too is we do understand that a lot of folks do have to work part-time while being in school. That's just the reality of the world that we live in now. And so we do give out our schedules ahead of time, so you know when you are in class, so that you can then hopefully work with your employer to figure out your schedule. But even in the interpreting program, I would say I'm going to say 85% of the students we have in the interpreting program are also working part-time and making it work. Yep. But again, that we work with the students too to give them a schedule ahead of time so they know what their schedule looks like, so then they can plan accordingly.
This next question is about admissions, so I'd be able to answer this one. So this person is asking if someone who hasn't completed high school, so doesn't have a high school diploma, are they able to come in and take ASL studies? The answer is yes. We just need to make sure that they have an equivalency. So what I would recommend is they could apply to the program online. We've got an online application on our website, and instead of sending in high school transcripts, they could email the admissions team and let them know that they haven't completed high school and would like to be tested to qualify. And the admissions team would then help set up a free test that they would be able to take. It's a test that is much faster than the GED test, which is much more involved, takes longer to do. So it can be a really kind of streamlined way to enter into this program or many of our programs at NSCC. Okay, great. I can see lots of other questions. Let me just read through for a second. We've got someone more a comment than a question, who's a bus driver and would see ASL studies as something really helpful in their work. So that's really nice to know. It being a day program, of course, has been mentioned, that's something to kind of consider for everyone who's trying to integrate it in with the work that they're currently doing. Here's a question about average age in the program. This person already has a bachelor's degree, 35 years old, and interested in coming to study. What kind of age range and type of experience do you see in the classroom for both programs?
Okay, yeah, so, average age, let me think, 20-ish to 40-ish at least. I've seen students last year in their 60s, even 70s. It's not unheard of, so it doesn't really matter. ASL is a new language to a lot of people. It doesn't really depend on your age. So if I were to guess an average age, 25. We see a lot of people who are 25, yeah.
Yeah, and I would say in the interpreting program, absolutely. I think the age sort of falls in that sort of mid 20s, late 20s, and we have individuals who come in with BAs and a wide variety of programs, which is great, coming in with the BAs. But we also have folks coming in just straight from ASL studies, and so it creates a really great eclectic mix of individuals, and if anything, a real reflection of the deaf community that we'll work with, right? And so all those sort of minds coming together with the goal of, working, striving to produce good interpretations and learning more about the deaf community. It's a real eclectic mix of individuals, and it was one of my favorite things. Went into the program at the age of 30, and I found myself right in the middle. So there were individuals who were, 40, 45, and then there were individuals who were 20, 21, 22, and it was a great, great mix of folks. And that's what we usually see in the program.
We've got a couple of questions about the duration of the programs and the NSCC school year. So for both of the programs we're talking about, they'd start in September. When do students wrap up their courses for the year?
Yeah, so they usually wrap up at the end of May. So we have our fall semester, our winter semester, and our spring semester. Spring semester is a 5-week semester. So our ASL study students are still learning ASL, still doing, taking on more of that learning more about sign variation, deaf community events. In the interpreting program, our first year students are doing a lot of project-based work. Which is a lot of fun. It is one of my favorite semesters because it is a lot of fun in that way that it was project based. And then that's in second year. That's when our second year students are out on their final placement.
And it is around the 3rd week of May, I should say, the 20th to the 25th. I think the last day is the 25th of May for them.
We've got a couple of questions here too about the portfolio that our program page mentions. I will right now dispel any rumors because I know it can be a little confusing when you're looking at the admission requirements. You don't require a portfolio of any type to apply to this program, but it is one of the learning outcomes of many of our programs at the college. Justin and Zoe, what does that portfolio look like for your programs?
Yeah, sure. Portfolio for the ASL studies, you start in the fall and over the year you gather the material to put in the portfolio. So for us, that really means samples of your skills, and you can see your skills grow along the way. So, and also you're writing cover letters and resumes. So you have that in your portfolio. So you gather that throughout the year. That's for the ASL studies side of things anyways. And we teach you how to do that, of course. So we teach you how to develop a resume and a cover letter. We teach you the ASL skills along the way. It is a really beneficial experience to go through the program and at the end of the year end up with a list of things that you've done over the year. And you have a very clear idea of your milestones along the way also, so that by the time you're getting to portfolio, if you're missing anything, you know exactly what you're missing and your faculty can support you in finding those gaps. Addressing those gaps.
Yeah, and I would say an exciting thing in the interpreting program, the exact same thing. You're taking samples of your work, you're building on it, you're demonstrating one of the program outcomes of like how to act ethically in interpreting situations. And right now, our second year students are gearing up for their what we call their portfolio presentations, which will be they'll deliver a presentation in front of faculty and deaf community members, as well as future colleagues. So again, another opportunity that we have for students to build and solidify those connections they've made out in the community with the deaf individuals and interpreting individuals. And that's an exciting thing that's coming up at the end of May for our second year students. And as Zoe said as well, you will be supported throughout the entire way on how to get yourself sorted and ready and feel good about what it is you're about to do.
All right, final question for today's webinar. Is there any concern about AI potentially taking over interpreting jobs?
I love this question. This is I'll start so then you can finish. This is a great question that is sort of starting to be discussed at the higher level in academia and in the world of interpreting. But at the end of the day, I would say that human to human connection is an integral part of interpreting, and that eventually AI will get to a point where it will be able to, I don't think replace, but support the work that we do and be better at supporting the work that we do. But really, I think of my parents, I think of other deaf folks out there. I know there's nothing better than having a person there when you need a person there. But I think when we think about AI in the future of interpreting, it's definitely going to have an impact like it is in all fields. But I'm maybe more optimistic in a sense that it's only going to enhance what we already do and just elevate it a bit more.
I said that was the last question, but I'm going to ask you one more.
I think Zoe just wants to respond to that.
Sure.
A little, yes, sure. I don't think that AI will take over interpreters' jobs, not in the near future anyway, because they're not emotional enough. The very nature of artificial intelligence is that it's artificial. They can't do facial grammar or like the just slight eyebrow raise that a human can do. AI isn't there yet.
Okay, so our last question for today, is there any kind of certification or an exam that's required to work as an interpreter provincially or nationally? Is that something that happens after the program if it is required?
Depending on where you choose to reside to work, each province has their own jurisdictions and their own regulations around that. And depending on the agency you choose to work for. So in Nova Scotia, once you graduate from the program, you're eligible to work as an interpreter in the province. If you want to work in New Brunswick, you have to take a screening that they offer, as well as other places across the country. So it all depends where you choose to work. Now, there are screenings out there and tests out there. So for myself, for instance, I'm accredited with the Federal Translation Bureau, which means I can work for the Government of Canada in whatever capacity that may be. But that's a screening that I had to work towards after graduating, and eventually became successful in it. But there are many screenings across the country that it all depends on what area you want to go into and where you live and what, I guess, regulations they may have in that area.
Wonderful. Well, thank you everyone who is watching, sending in questions. These were all really great questions. Justin and Zoe, I really appreciate you being here to share all of these exciting details about your programs. Brenna, thank you for being our interpreter on staff today. If anyone who has more questions, please feel free to send them to us. recruitment@nscc.ca is the email address on screen. You're welcome to reach out with anything that you're curious about. That email address is monitored by myself and my colleagues in recruitment. And if you have any questions that are specifically for Justin or Zoe, we'd be happy to forward them along. All right, well, we'll sign off for today. Thanks again, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.